G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Aussie Starcraft, and on this beautiful morning we're bringing you some games from the ACE Team Story Cup. In the top left hand side, as our red Terran player, it's going to be Team Liquid's Taeja. The top right hand corner is our blue Protoss player, is going to be YoeFWSAn. So another TVP from this awesome Team Story Cup, and we've had a fantastic set of games thus far. We've seen some very cheeky Protoss builds early on, particularly with HOTS and others. And we've seen some remarkable holds from our Terran players, and things are going about 50-50 at the moment between these two pro teams. They go toe-to-toe in the Team Story Cup. This map is, of course, Alterzim Stronghold. Alterzim Stronghold provides a lot of interesting dynamics. We've seen some fantastic games. For those of you that saw the IEM coverage, you would have seen the funny SOS vs Jack-G game on this map. And that game is rather... well, it's hard to say that game is typical of the sorts of builds we've seen. Nothing about that game was typical. But it is typical of the variety of games that come out of this map. The sheer size of the map and the unique map features often dictate a sort of change in pace from what you'd see on your traditional and much smaller maps. For example, Alterzim Stronghold has this pocket natural tucked away. You can only reach it through the main base for any land units, which makes it a little bit easier to secure, particularly early on in the game. Though when we've got both our players spawning in the top location, it does make one player very susceptible to drops. As you can see, Taeja's is actually slightly further away from his opponents, whereas San's expansion is towards his opponents. So things like drops can get there very quickly, and that's obviously something you've got to be mindful of when you're playing against Terran players. As a result, we see a lot of Protoss players on this map decide to go some sort of sky build, or at least open with a few Phoenix to ensure that those drops can't sneak their way. And as you can see, it is quite a large surface area to try and defend. And doing that with just photon cannons in your mothership can tend to be very difficult. So a lot of Protoss players lately have been opening with some sort of Phoenix opening, use it to harass and annoy their opponent, and then use it to ensure they don't get dropped in their production. Of course, Taeja going to be opening with a Reaper. It's fairly standard in the current environment. Reaper's going to allow him a nice big scout. Occasionally you see additional Reapers built, but most often just the single Reaper. Get a good scout out, see what the Protoss player is up to. And as we can see, San actually walling off with his buildings here. It's going to allow him to drop some sort of tech structure behind this and make it quite difficult to scout, of course, unless Taeja decides to throw down a scan. Looks like San and Taeja both going straight for their natural expansion, so those will be coming up quite quickly. Likely that both players are going to work more towards a macro style opening than the traditional highly aggressive variants we've seen on some of these other maps like Merry-Go-Round. Reaper going to get in and get a nice scout off. Unfortunately, not a lot for the Reaper to see just yet. And we can see that Taeja actually very confidently throwing down this reactor behind the first Reaper. That's not a bad choice, except against Proxy Oracle builds. If you get Proxy Oracled and throw down that reactor straight away, you can often get caught with an insufficient number of Marines and find your mineral line getting blasted to shreds. But, luckily for Taeja, his scout has determined that he's not playing against Proxy Oracle. And the Stargate will in fact be built in the back of San's base. So San continuing to plow along here, producing a few Stalkers, Warp Gate on the way, with the Mothership Core patrolling, trying to ensure that this cheeky Reaper doesn't make his way back into the base. Taeja continuing to produce Marines two at a time. We do have the factory and now the starport on the way, so there's a 1-1-1 opening from Taeja, as opposed to, for example, Polt, who we see often opens with 3 barracks quite quickly and then goes straight for the starport, so he gets his quick stim pack and is able to harass his opponent with drops. So we're seeing a few differences between Polt and Taeja and other prominent Terrans in the current environment. These Widow Mine drops though becoming quite popular. Players grabbing a medevac or two, loading up with some Marines and Widow Mines and attempting to drop it between their opponent's base. Looks like that Reaper's going to be cleaned up there in the back of the natural expansion. Already workers killed. Looks like Taeja managed to nail one probe, so not a bad exchange for the Reaper, but would have liked to keep it alive, get the scout intel off. If we check out Taeja's vision, he does in fact know the Stargate's there, so he is is fairly aware of what he's versing at the moment. What he doesn't know is that this third Nexi has actually gone down very quickly. 6 minutes on Alterzim is quite a quick expansion. You often find yourself facing a 2-base timing, so you've got to be very careful with this sort of thing. Luckily for San, well, luckily is probably the wrong expression. San very boldly going to be expanding in front of his base very quickly. This will allow his mothership core to defend it with photon overcharge. Actually get that third Nexi up. It's at its most vulnerable now while it's constructing, but things like those Phoenix harassing Taeja are going to keep Taeja in his base for the next minute or two. We see it's 100 resources lost to 50, so not a whole lot has been lost thus far. Another more Phoenix being chrono boosted out behind this. That'll be essential to keeping those bases safe. A scan going down in the main base. It will in fact see the Forge, but doesn't actually spot anything particularly interesting. Twilight Council also getting picked up there, but it's not as if Taeja's particularly concerned about some sort of blink stalker all in. We're well and truly past the point where those stalkers would have been warped in, and the blink would have had to be well and truly finished by now. So Taeja just going to continue producing units, swapping out a few of his barracks. Now going to start Stim Pack. I imagine we'll see Combat Shield begin momentarily. +1 upgrade is on the way for Taeja, as well as the +1 armor for San. Zealot Charge also being researched in the Twilight Council. Very important upgrade, particularly against Terran, who will just kite back and forth with the Stim Pack all day long. So need to get that up as quick as possible. Otherwise, those Zealots really become just expensive paperweights as the Terran turn them into pincushions. I have a bit of a force moving out here from Taeja. 2 medevacs worth of Marines and Marauders moving out. They will come across this third base relatively soon, though they do have to watch out. These 3 Phoenix can make themselves very unpopular with the Terran, just nicking around the edges, particularly with all the high ground, low ground edges that we see on Alterzim. Very easy for Phoenix and Vikings later on to get position above the high ground, and to make things quite difficult for units like Medevacs and Colossi. So we'll see if that plays any part, but Alterzim is quite a dynamic map for those sorts of encounters. We have a very bold Marine here scouting the third base. The zone is going to stick around as Stalker will clean him up. The remainder of these medevacs and Marines are going to take down that Zealot. Zealot charge almost complete. We actually have the Templar Archives finishing up as well. Terran Armor level 1 now starting. And the Armory coming up now for those 2-2 upgrades. These Vikings can... these Phoenix, continuing to dance around the medevacs, just trying to make Taeja as uneasy as possible. And with Taeja currently still on 2 bases, it is quite an awkward and difficult position to be in as a Terran player. Terran would often love to have an expansion up on their opponents, but San managing to get this third base up and running and actually almost saturated now will put Taeja in quite an uncomfortable position. San can continue to macro quite hard. He can more than afford things like his High Templar. That Storm is now coming up. He just has to hold out against this quite intimidating army here. Zealot is going to scout this force moving forward. Plenty of Widow Mines here. Widow Mines great for cleaning up these Zealot meat walls that are so often employed. We have 1 Archon here to do the DPS, and Photon Overcharge being forced out of the Nexus there. Question is, how will San defend this once that Photon Overcharge runs out? Not enough energy for a second one to follow. And mainly gateway units, a single Archon, so potential to warp in a few more Archons, but right now most of the gas is being employed in upgrades, things like the Storm, the Ground Armor level 2, all of those things going to make life a little bit difficult for San, though every minute he holds on here things are looking better and better. So I think San would actually love a High Templar or 2 for feedback. These medevacs extremely high on energy. A feedback would actually insta-kill either of those medevacs at this point. Nice force fields there, going to trap part of this Terran army. The problem is when these Zealots charge into the minefields, they will get absolutely destroyed. We find that work is killed, still 2 to 4, so not a whole lot of economic damage being dealt on either side, but these minefields providing a lot of trouble for San here. Really is currently using the Oracle for Revelation to allow him to spot some of these minefields, but if he's not careful, that Oracle could get picked off, and here Taeja goes for a quick stim forward, and those Marines will focus down the Oracle. So not anything available for San to actually detect these Widow Mines. We see an Observer being chrono boost out now to try and make up for it. Ground armor level 3 on the way. We've got 0 attack upgrades, but almost 3 armor, so interesting differential there as we see Taeja has actually got his 2s on the way. Nice storms going down, quick morph into the Archon. Archon unfortunately does get cleaned up, and 3 Zealots die to those 2 Widow Mines. So these Widow Mines starting to do a lot of work here. Have an Observer out that can now spot us. Stalker can clean these up. Always keep in mind, single Stalker, it does outrange the Widow Mine. You can start to work your way down. You've got to be careful though, you can accidentally wander into the range of the other one. Stalkers will get focused down, but unfortunately for the Marines and Marauder, that will attract a storm for those. Have a Warp Prism coming out now, and is that... No? Yeah, it looks like there was a little bit of a Zealot run by occurring at that natural base, and nice choice. It looks like it ran up from this location. San continuing to warp in more and more Zealots there. Looks like the Warp Prism actually moving out to continue that harass. I love this choice from San. He's able to defend here, just continue to warp in units on this defensive line. Storms and Zealots to ensure that Taeja can't make any further leaps or strides forward, and able to then start warping in units into the production of Taeja. It really does break down your Terran opponent, but you can divide them over several areas of focus. So it's Warp Prism coming in now. Looks like Taeja has actually seen this coming. We've got several Widow Mines here. Zealot's going to be charging in, but unfortunately unable to warp in any excess units, and the missile turret is going to force it out of the mineral line. So unfortunately that didn't quite do what San would have liked, but I do like where he's thinking that. This Immortal starting to rack in a little bit of damage. Nice storms consistently going down from San, as Taeja's entire army is red and well, now yellow and orange health. These medevacs working overtime. It's one thing I'd love to see more out of San. It's focusing down these medevacs. He does have the Phoenix. He can pluck away at the sides, make life very difficult for him. Nice attempt on the storm there. Unfortunately, Taeja, seeing it coming, did manage to duck back out of the way. These Widow Mines still in play here. Same 5 Widow Mines, continuing to rack up damage by damage. Colossi now on the way, and unfortunately, bad rally point from San's actually going to get that Colossus snipe without getting any damage off. And that is a big loss for San. He really couldn't afford to lose expensive gas units like the Colossi without any damage. Beautiful storm though on this unit of fire. Second storm, and Taeja decides to tank it as he tries to chase down these Archons and Colossi. Unfortunately, so much damage being taken there. Lots of medevacs here trying to heal up, but almost this entire army is damaged in some way. Taeja starting to produce Vikings 2 at a time to counteract these Colossus, though with the Colossus coming out 2 at a time themselves, it will be quite a bit of difference. We see San throwing down a storm just to clean up the Widow Mine. Not the most common way we see those storms employed. San has to be so careful here. He can find himself without his third base very quickly if he's not careful. So continuing to try and bake this army. If he can split it into 2 chunks, he will end up in a great position. Storm going down again on these units. More storm on Taeja's army. And Taeja forced to back out yet again as these Colossi and Archons just go to town. And one of my favourite parts about Alterzim at a stronghold is the defensive sort of choke points that you have on this third base. You have the opponent trying to squeeze their way through these narrow entrances to try and take out the third base. It's just so easy for a Protoss player to defend. The difficult thing for a Protoss player on this map is trying to defend these external bases from drops, but as we can see, San's had that fairly well covered for most of the game, and as a result, only having to defend these narrow choke points, which is a Protoss's dream. Protoss players do love to fight in those chokes. Things like force fields and High Templar do just make short work of most enemy armies. We see both players moving out here. San beginning to clean up these, but if San's not careful, he's going to end up in a pincer move. Taeja taking a lot of damage from the storms, but still plenty of Vikings. Vikings well positioned over this high ground, going to be able to clean up a lot of these Colossi. One Colossus will go down. Second Colossus looks like it will fall very quickly by reinforcements coming in, but still just too many Zealots and Archons making their way across the ground force. All these medevacs are in fact out of energy. These Bioforce is forced to pull back here and trying to make it into the safety of these structures. There's a bunker there that could be put to use. These Vikings may be forced to land. In fact, they will land on top of the Stalkers. We have this Archon going to town. 18 kills on this Archon as he makes his points back time and time again. 20 kills on that Archon. So you can see just how much damage these Archons can do if not focused down. We have San going to warp in a few more Archons here. Reinforcements being warped in here at the front line. We have the 4th base down now for Taeja, slowly going to be building that orbital command there, but it looks like San is not having to borrow, but he's going to engage. He has plenty of energy for Storm, and Taeja is pinned against the buildings. Great Storm does go down, doing massive damage to that Bioforce. 3 Storms, that arm is literally stormed to death. Taeja taps out. GG, well played. What a game from both Taeja and San. We saw Taeja's absolutely relentless attacks here at the third. Unfortunately, San just managing to hold it by the skin of his teeth. Often it was a single unit, a single Colossi, a single Archon, making all the difference between Taeja just being stalled or actually rolling over that third base. So, great game out of San there, managing to knock Taeja out, and he will continue on in this series. So I hope you're enjoying our coverage of the ACE Team Story Cup. We're going to have more games coming up right after this. We've got some great Liquid TLO games we're planning to cast, so any TLO fans out there, I'm sure you'll appreciate those. And if this is your first time on the channel, we'd love to see you here again in the future. Please subscribe. The button's above the video, below the video, or even at the start of the video. There's a link on the top right hand side, so please do subscribe. You get free updates whenever we upload videos, and you'll be kept up to date on all this Heart of the Swarm goodness. Thanks guys, hope you enjoyed the cast. This is Aussie Starcraft, and I'll catch you in the next cast.